Alright, here we are with an uncommon request. The original 2DS USBC mod. We're just gonna take all these screws off the back. These two are captive screws, although this one looks a little bit stripped, should still come off. Just waiting until you hear a little pop, a little snap movement, because you can't actually unscrew them since they're captive. And then there's a little divot right here where you can get a little spudger or something and lift the back case off. Then we're gonna set aside the battery. There's a little lip. On this side, do that. That's 'cause it's short. Don't do that. Get it from this angle where there's a divot and then there's a lip to pull up the battery. Although my nails are not long enough to get in there. There we go. And then we're up. Now we have to get all these screws. I like to have these little tins, and I put magnets in them. Usually with systems they try to have two sets of screws, one size on the outside and then a second size on the inside. Obviously that's the ideal. There's gonna be maybe like a little bit of odd spawn screws here and there. So I have one set for outside screws and then inside screws. So let's get started, eh? This is a pretty easy mod. There's really not much case modifying you have to do. There are just a few little things to watch out for, and I'll talk to them as I get to them. This part is just dead simple, so I don't even include it in the instructions. You could find tons of videos and online guides about how to disassemble. The 2DS is fairly easy to take apart and put back together. It's the 2DS XL, which is a pretty good mod. There's so many ways you can go wrong with that one. I don't sell that. Many of these mod boards, and I don't do that many of these revisions. I have a feeling it wasn't that popular, or the people who have that are pretty satisfied. They don't feel like changing it. I will say the 2DS is always the most beat up of the systems I get. I mean, this one is not super great, but it's not that bad. I get some real beat up ones, like people have been kicking it across the room. People definitely got their money's worth out of the 2DS. All right, I just had the flu, so, you know, if you're stiff, then that's what that's about. Do we have any more screws? Yup. Annoying. I'm just gonna pull that off. Ugh, forgot about. The camera cable. All right, there is a camera cable right here. Let's see if I can get a good shot of it. Yeah, that's not happening. So much to do at once, and now I'm trying to videotape it. Oh, there we go. You can see the camera cable. That's the camera to the outside camera. You're just gonna want to get in and flip that. Let me use some tweezers. Get in, flip the latch. Done. And we've successfully taken the back off. Now I'm gonna catch that screw. Got it. Put it with the rest. Put this away. I won't even do anything with that. And, here's the first trap. Usually there's... This one must have broken off. Let me see. No, I didn't see it. I'll check the video back later, but no, because I do see cracking around here. So this probably just came out way earlier than this. So this is your first trap. These little posts, you could just sort of take them out. They're not super tight, friction fit. But with dirt and grime over the ears, they become a little bit tighter. There's the volume, slider, and all the controls. Just want to pull these plastic parts off. They're easy to come off, but when you're putting together, it's a little fiddly. So set that aside. You also don't need to bonify those. And now I like to just give up. You know, you could try and leave these in here with the springs, but, you know, if something happens, better to just sort of have a controlled removal now than having a spring for life later. So let me just take that off. Make sure I've got the spring. And there we go. See? And same. Here, take it off. Make sure I've got the spring. It doesn't go flying off. There. Now we don't have to worry about that. There's two types of motherboards, Type A and Type B, and the way you determine them is by this right here. I forget which one is which, but one of them is a removable Wi-Fi card with an antenna. So here's the Wi-Fi card. It can come out like that. Make sure I put that back in, and it has an antenna that goes over here. This little socket holds it, and then it's a PCB antenna right there. The other model has a chip right here. That's the Wi-Fi. And it does away with all this antenna stuff. I don't know if it's better or worse. I couldn't say. However, why it's important is because it changes the design over here, because it has to make space for this PCB board. So it has to cut this out. And because it has to make space, you're going to need either I'm looking at this, the A or the B. Let's see. The left side is the same on both of them. So it's the right side that's different. I'm going to guess for the socket ones it's the B, but we'll see when we get this all out. Now, do you need to remove the whole motherboard? No, but your life is way easier if you do. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with loosening all these motherboard screws and then just shit out of them. I really didn't curse because of YouTube nonsense, but whatever. So let's count them off. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 motherboard screws you're going to have to take out. I think they're all the same size. However, since these screws have 6 green little circles around them, but these two do not, I like to keep these 2 separate because they might be a different length. I know for a fact that these 2 are different length. So I keep these 2 separate and then these 2 separate away from my little magnet system. So yeah. 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 All right, this is the first ones that keep separate, but I don't think they're actually different length, so it may not be necessary for this. The ones around the audio jack. All right, now we're loose a little. There seems to have been some cracking over here. It shouldn't affect the mod too much. These ones are most definitely a different size. You can see it right there, so they need to be kept separate. Like I said, the ideal is to have only 2 size screws. The reality is often different. Now get these flex cables. Do I need two? Yes. Let's get these flex cables. Done. There are a surprising number of flex cables on this thing. Yeah. All right. Let's get the whole thing off. There we go. There we go. I like to check. The backside, make sure no, these rubbers came up. So is a nightmare when you lose one of these little bits. So let's just put this aside. We don't need to mess with it, all right, because we removed it, is going to be super easy, so it's going to put some flux and some low-melt solder right there. Here's the flux I use, although you can barely see it, but you can see it in my other videos. So let's get some flux. Let me get this fan going. You know what? I don't think I'm going to use low-melt solder this one usually. Just drops out, right? Let's see. Oh, here's the first big trap. So these two pads are here. I mean, for really, these 4 pads are through hole pads, so you can melt them to the bottom, and then you start pushing them in the back. I mean, you can start pushing them all the way through to remove this power connector. However, these 2 pads at the back, right here, and right here, you can see those are soldered on to the top of this PCB, so you can't get at them from the back. So we're gonna just put a big glob of solder here, then put some big globs of solder there, and then we're just gonna circle through and then try to remove this. We could do it with high heat gun, but it's not with a heat gun. Don't have it up here, or we could do it with the assistance. With the assistance of a hot plate that is also not up here, all right. I've added a little bit of solder there. Now we're gonna add solder to the sides, add some flux to the top, just gonna keep this bad boy up, and everything should just sort of pop off. I mean, not like popcorn, it's not gonna pop off, but it'll be easy. Trust. Because I'm not using a little melt solder, I'm actually using a ton of solder. There we go, and there we go. Now circle, 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 circle. Look, it's already sort of coming off. Come on, there we go. That's the lady man's way to do it. And like a big gold solder blogs everywhere. That's why it's not necessarily the smartest way to do it. But quick, let's see, what do we have here? No damage, no lose solder balls. We're good. Okay, now, before we do anything else, we're gonna need to flatten this, so we're gonna take some soldering wick or desoldering braid, whatever it's called, lay that down and get some solder off my tip. They're a nice clean tip and just... With this all up, let's get this done. Wickety-click, quick, kitty-click. And I... said click twice, all right. Now that we've got it relatively flat looking at... Yeah, that looks like B, so B is removable. Motherboard. There we go, I will. Change these out one day, for these are a tab jig version for a different motherboard, but I'm gonna come out with a brand for this because it's a little annoying because you have to solder it from the back. This is gonna be sitting on the top so it could fall off. What prevents it from falling off is I use a ton of flux and it just sort of sticks on. Not super effective. I also sometimes get like some tissue paper, or something like this, fold it in, fold it, and fold it again, and this forms a little thumb guard so I can hold it down with a finger like that while I put the solder iron up from the other side. Again, this is all gonna get a reiteration. Another way to do it is to put a little table like that, and this will keep it from falling, and it'll push into it as we do our soldering, so there's a little table. Let's get the iron. Should all be done relatively quickly. I can't imagine this taking much more than 30 minutes. Oh, come on, I forgot to turn it on. I kind of wish you would just immediately start heating as soon as I plug in. I don't plug it in to look at it. All right. Now you have to understand and respect that we've just dumped a lot of heat into it. So before we move it or turn it over to check that we've made a good connection, we're just gonna let things cool. You can actually speed it up by adding a little alcohol. So where's the alcohol? Get a little energy out of the system. There we go. It should be cool enough now, so we're gonna flip it. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little visual inspection. Make sure it's not lifted. And it does not seem lifted to me. But this thing's still a little Yeah, it's not hot enough that I could do that. Well, that came off. I don't prefer that. So what I prefer to show a good connection is that enough solder has flowed through these to make a little bubble. So, what do I do? Think. All right, we're gonna try this. We're gonna put this back on. You know, it's not gonna do much now that I've snapped off. Yeah, it's not gonna do anything. I don't want to heat up the whole thing and lose something. All right, we're gonna try from the top first. Let's see if I can just fill it from the top. Put a tiny bit of flux in that one. Put a tiny bit of flux in that one. I consider them my little fill indicators. Although, it's a lot harder than you'd think to get solar to flow all the way up and through it. Gonna apply a lot of heat. All right, so we're heating up the pad and I'm gonna try to flow solder into it. What the hell? This may be too big. Yeah, that's annoying. I'm just gonna do it from the other side. I can't do it with this tip, it's too big. So, we're just gonna add a Let's put our support, just in case we get enough heat to move the whole thing. And we're gonna try not to create too much movement either. All right, let's see. Did we get a fill? No, and now I lifted the whole damn thing. Did I? It's so hard to tell. This is so much easier with a hot plate, but that is not up to here. This will take more than 30 minutes at this point. Let's try this one more time. Let's try first with this one. Oh, I moved the... Well, the fill indicators ain't really working too well here. I may have to make the bigger on my next iteration, or move out a pad so I can heat it more easily. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to make them bigger. Make big old pads on the side so I can heat up little fill indicators. All right, well, let's see if I lifted it off. And we lost connection. Hopefully not. Don't think I have many more Type B. All right, we don't have a short, and we also do not have positive connection. This one is positive, and it's not connecting with the pad, but it'll wait. I'm gonna heat it because I lifted it when I tried heating this up from the other side. All right, filling again. I could just run a wire. I don't want to. It seems kinda cheap. But I may have to just go downstairs and put this under the right tools, or go downstairs and grab a different soldering iron. That way you can finally have different tips. It's very important to have, small tips for this job. I think I'm gonna put more solder here and more solder here, and then I'm gonna try to slow it down. Let's get some flux. All right, let's try the right side first. All right, let's try cool, and the left side. All right, let's see if I made a connection. I'm tempted to open the back of this on the design so that it makes a big, deep, castellated hole. I don't want to weaken this thin board more than it already is. Huh? Hello? We have connection. Let's double check. I don't have a short. All right, we've got connection. And let's try tapping it very lightly so that we're not pushing anything down. We have connection. I don't have to get the other tools. I don't have to do anything else, but it did take a little bit. Let's clean a little bit of this flux off. All right. Okay, now for our next step is to make the modification to the plastic. Let's go. This is going to be our cutting guide for making our initial cuts in there. So, you just put this in here like this. See that? And you put this in there. It only goes one way, so don't worry too much about it. Then you get a nice little friction fit. Like that. And then you can squeeze it together like this. Grab this and be annoyed. Because you're going to have to basically screw in the first part. An undersized file would help a lot getting this started. You can also just screw it in and screw it out until you get enough cut. Okay. Okay. All right. We got most of the cut done there. After I get the bulk of the cut done, I just eyeball it from there. All right, just pop this off. All right, now we've got the bulk of the cut done. I'm just going to eyeball it. Okay. You're going to basically need to chase it all the way to the end on both sides. I'm a little too conservative with the cut on the guide, so that's all right. It's mostly there to get you started and to guide you to where to start making the proper cut. So that you don't eyeball it and make some wild cuts. And we can check the fit by trying to push the USBC through it. And we see that we've got the top done well, but we're going to need to cut a little bit more on the bottom. The problem is that you imagine that USBC looks like this. Where one circle defines these radii, right? That's what you imagine. And that is wrong. It looks more like this. A flat, and then a circle, and then a circle. A flat, and then another radius. Ignore the middle parts. But essentially it looks more like this, where there's a flat, and then there's two smaller radii. So when you're chasing it with a file, you end up cutting it to depth correctly here, but then you have bad fits on the top and bad fits at the bottom. So you have to attack the top and bottom of your cuts with the file, so that you get closer to this. Even the file, even this guide, it doesn't allow you a lot of wiggle room. So this is just going to chase you to the correct distance, a little bit under the correct distance. And then you're going to chase the fine details in and out, up, in and out, up. Obviously, very exaggerated in this picture. Until you get this USB-C to fit through the hole you've cut out. And then once you've got that, you can start putting things together. I think we've got it, although I think I'm going to clear out a little bit of this part here. We look good. Otherwise, we look good, although we did come out a little too far on this side. It's not something that can be crazy noticeable in the final build, but that was a little tad aggressive. There we go. So now we're going to start putting things back together. A little trap for you is when you start putting this back together, you're going to put the motherboard in. And then you're going to try to put this in. If you've already screwed the motherboard and you cannot, it don't work like that. This has to go in with the motherboard, so you're going to have to fit this in and then put it down. And you probably screw it down first. So let's put this on. You just slip this bad boy on right there. Do I have? Oh no. There we go. Now let's try the final fit. I forgot about that. It looks fine. I'm going to have to clear that. I forgot about that. See that little triangle right there? Oh, and we have to get rid of those. Let me deburr this with a tweezer. Where is my knife? Small knife will deburr this just fine. There we go. And then we're going to need to cut this where we have. There we go. We just need to cut a little bit of that angle right there. Give ourselves some clearance. All right, let's check the fit again. And we are Gucci. I could shave this down on the inside to give us a little bit more room when things are put back together. But it might be fine. We'll see. If it's not fine, I'll have to go get a rotary sander. Now you want to flip these first, because these are the ones you're really only going to have trouble with. Put them through the hole and we're good. This stupid magnetized speaker is going to want to get onto the screen because it's metal. You have to be careful. These wires are very fragile, and when you snap them, you're going to have to solder them back in place. There we go. Pull these through. All right, that's all our flux cables. Nope, there's always one. There you go, all our flux cables. See if I can't get this in without taking it out. Sometimes I can get it back in without having to. There we go. There we go. Okay, so I got the controller back in. I'm going to put the flux cables in a bit first, before I forget, because you were about to see me forget. We have to put this back on. Beautiful. Not annoying. All right, so it's definitely a little high on the right side on the bottom. So I'm going to take it out and we're going to cut that. Where is... There we go. Right side bottom. Actually, you see there's a hole here and a hole here and a hole here. There's locating pegs there. So you kind of just slip them under the motherboard and then onto the pegs. I think I got them. All right, everything's looking good. Now we're going to screw these down with these two screws that we kept separate. Where is my regular screwdriver? Oh, it's not a regular screwdriver. Not a powered one. Well, I guess we're going to use the powered one. What we're going to do is use a magnetic screwdriver, and you want to go counterclockwise until you feel and hear a little click. Screw that down. Counterclockwise. Hello. Don't get lost. There's a third thing we could have been doing at the same time, which is making sure these get on. It's going to be a little bit harder because we didn't do it at the same time, but it's not a big enough difference that I care. Slip that back in place. That's what it looks like. I hope you just saw that. I just saw it. So annoying. This is why this is so annoying. You saw that? This little bugger fell off. Let's make sure we get that back in place. If I could ask for one superpower, it would be telekinesis. It would be so much easier. Hold everything in place. One more sanity check of our connections. I want to make sure well, obviously I still have ground, but let's make sure I have 5 volts. All right. Just a sanity check before I start screwing everything down. These are the other 2 screws we saved, and we're going to put them on the audio jack over here. They don't really have any indicators of where they're supposed to go. Just got to remember. Same thing before. We got to put all these lovely screws back. Again, telekinesis, putting all the screws back in at once. It would be beautiful. Isn't it kind of crazy when there's superpowers evolve like telekinesis? Suddenly everybody's an artist. I mean, I can grab a pencil and I can draw, but I'm not an artist. And yet if you have telekinesis, suddenly you can disassemble watches and do all this high-skill work. You might as well have telekinetics paint the Mona Lisa by controlling the paintbrushes. Makes just as much sense for them to all of a sudden become super skilled at all these myriad of tasks. The problem with superpowers that are disconnected from physical activity, they just quickly flanderize themselves. Jean Grey went from being one of the weakest X-Men to the most powerful. And even Sue Storm went from just being the invisible girl to talking about putting invisible force fields in your bloodstream to kill you. It's just ridiculous. So if you can karate chop, all of a sudden one day you're going to be able to karate chop atoms in half. Power scaling just gets ludicrous. Nerds say, it's possible, therefore he's going to be able to do it. I mean, it's possible for you to paint as well as Rembrandt, but you're not going to do it. At the very least, you can be painting way better than you are now, especially if you don't paint at all, like me. You don't paint a piano. You're not a world-class athlete, but you have legs, so why aren't you as powerful as Legman the runner? Usain Bolt is basically Legman, isn't he? Except everybody has his power. Or it seems so on the surface. We can all walk, we can all run, but we're not all Usain Bolt. One day you can just turn invisible, and the next you can start putting invisible bubbles in people's bloodstream from a distance. That's the problem. We don't have any reference points for how ridiculous it is. It's a lot easier to show Batman training to be an elite fighter than it is to show how someone trains to get their bubble foo up. Come out of there. Anyways. All right, we're going to try to get these in. I don't even try to get the spring in at first. I just make sure that all the plastic parts fit, and then I use a tweezer to bunch the spring back. I think I might have to use a smaller tweezer. We're almost there. I do have to use a smaller tweezer. I'm just trying to get the spring over the peg. And there we go. Now the other side. Again, I don't even try to make sure it comes down with the spring. I just make sure that the plastic parts fit. There we go. Now I try to get the spring over the peg. I have that Disney song stuck in my head. Remember Me and Hellfire will be an odd medley. Remember Me, Esmeralda? Let's not mangle this spring to death. Let me just put it over the peg first. Then, while I have it held over the peg, let me make sure that the plastic parts are all in. Oh, that's easier. Just do that, all right? Use one set of tweezers to hold it over the peg, and then with your other, and then hold it in place while it's over the peg. And then manipulate the plastic part in place. All right. Before I forget, let's get all these flex cables back in. So these are the flex cables for the screens. I wonder which model 3DS is the most popular. I'm going to assume 3DS XL. I know for a fact that the new 3DS original is probably the least popular, but easily the most expensive now. Remember me, or Esmeralda will burn. Don't do this to me. Go in, go in. Let me play that song again. Remember me or Hellfire. All right. Now that you have Hellfire playing, you can get this done. Again, holes for the plastic pegs. All right, you didn't see me do that. This volume slider has to fit over this volume slider, so make sure you have that fit correctly and just lean it over. This side is way easier because it doesn't have to deal with the fiddly bottom slider, and its little cage is screwed into it, so there's nothing to really lose. Looks like this guy bent this peg. I'm just going to clip it. It's not doing anything. It's potentially going to get in my way. But that was one of the holes for one of the pegs. Like I said, these are always the most beat up. I did work on someone's device where the dog bit it. It shows that people love their devices. There's the collector's love of keeping everything in perfect proceeding condition. And then there's the player's love of sleeping with it, going to bed with it. They love using it. They didn't love keeping it in perfect condition. They loved using it. And that's ultimately what it's all for. What's money if not to spend? And what are things if not to be used? Is that good? Oh, beautiful. It's beautiful. You see, that's what I'm talking about. It's not too bad, but it's fiddly. Because it's mostly just sitting there. So again, I like to put the volume slider on first, because we're just gonna flex it back onto itself. And you can move it back and forth. We're good. And then onto the pegs. And then we're good, see? Don't try to put them on together. It's too fiddly. Oh, you know what I forgot? Our one surviving lanyard post. Let's put that down. There is another model where the side shields, I think, have a plastic post. No, that's not true. This one has a plastic post right here. They both have plastic posts and metal posts. I am incorrect. I wonder why they decided to get rid of the removable Wi-Fi module. I guess it's too expensive, not in just parts, but the man-hours of having to put it in, tape it down, route it, and then also test it. And they're like, no, 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 just get a Wi-Fi module, float onto the board, and be done with it. I've said before, and I still believe it'd be interesting if we had an interview with people who assembled these, but I guess it wouldn't be that interesting. It's not really different than assembling any other electronic device. But I'd like to hear a retrospective on all the design decisions and what kind of constraints the engineers had. What they were thinking, how they reacted to reports coming back from the assembly people. Look at that. All right, well, we've got it squeezed together like a sandwich. We're going to put the battery in. We're going to power it up, see if it charges, and then we're going to screw everything back together. However, now that I think about it, I'm going to put 2 screws, one here, just so that things don't fall apart. It'd be silly for me to have yet another accident. There we go. You definitely don't want to screw it so much that you get that little ratcheting sound. I'm about to strip one of these screws doing this nonsense. All right, there we go. Just 2 screws so we can test things.